Yeah, well, thanks folks for all joining and for your interest in wilderness study area monitoring this summer. I super appreciate it. Um, like I said, we're going to record this conversation so that folks who aren't able to join will have access to it as well. And I will work with Keely to make sure that we can have this session like loaded on the Wilderness Study Area Monitoring webpage so that it's available there as well. So it's kind of like an um, evergreen resource. Well, for those of you that I haven't met, my name's Aubrey. I use she, her pronouns. I am Wild Montana's staff attorney. I live in Billings, which is in the Elk River Valley. The Yellowstone River is known as the Elk River to the Upsallake people, the Crow Nation. And this area is the traditional homelands and contemporary homelands of the Crow and many other Great Plains tribal nations. And it's not lost on me that I am but one of many people who have loved and cared about these places for a very long time. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, again, thank you for your interest in wanting to be a wilderness study area monitor, a WSA monitor. It's a really wonderful opportunity to get to know some of these really cool and wild places and help Wild Montana as well as our agency partners keep an eye on like what's going on, alert us to things that need to be addressed, alert us to, I shouldn't say alert, but just kind of keep an ongoing record of those wilderness values in these areas, the various like laws and regulations that surround and govern WSAs, both BLM and Forest Service do require the Forest Service and the BLM to conduct ongoing monitoring and to kind of keep an ongoing record of conditions in the field. Very often the agencies just don't have time or the staff capacity to be able to do that. And while, our volunteer monitoring efforts are in no way an attempt or a means to satisfy those regulatory or statutory requirements, it is really helpful and it does go a long way both for, again, the agency and for us. So we do appreciate it. So yeah, I just want to use this opportunity to kind of open the floor to folks for questions about how the programs works. If you have any questions about like access to technology or the handbook, I will say first and foremost, if you're here, you're probably already registered as a wilderness study area monitor. If for some reason you haven't, please go ahead and fill out this registration form that I'm going to drop in the chat right now. And that is what will help us keep track of who is signed up to be a volunteer with us. Keeping really accurate numbers of volunteers and volunteer hours is really essential for our stewardship work. It helps us track and calculate all of the good that we actually are doing for Montana's public lands. And they really help with grant reporting and grant applications. So, anybody who wants to submit a monitoring form, wants to be a part of monitoring efforts, I just ask that, everybody sign up so that every single person who's taking part gets counted in our numbers. And similarly that folks submit their own reports. So like even if say you and your partner go out on the same day and largely observe the same things, just go ahead and submit 2 different reports. That again just helps us understand how many people are doing this work and how many individual volunteer hours are out there. So that's the registration. Once you're registered, you get a copy of our great volunteer handbook. I actually have one printed off right here that I can show you what it looks like. You don't have to print it off. It is a pretty beefy PDF. I think it's like 30 odd pages. But definitely make sure you have access to it on your computer somewhere. And in that handbook, it has hopefully all of the information that you'll need for the program, including instructions for how to download and use our Survey 123 app on your phone to be able to collect and record your information digitally. as well as like paper hard copies if you print it out, of the monitoring forms themselves. So with that sort of baseline information out there, just feel free to, raise your hand or take yourself off mute and shout out what questions you have. If you want to drop them in chat instead, like that's good too. Again, just want to make sure that this is a time for you guys to ask questions that you feel like you don't already have an answer to. So fire away.
So Aubrey, this is Scott Hills. Actually, let me take myself off or turn the video on, see if I'll probably get washed out. Let's see if this works. But actually, while we see this works, let me say that I spent 30 years doing GIS as a profession. So the Survey 123 application you're referring to, is that the one provided by Esri? No,
yes.
You don't. Okay.
Yes.
Do we know who our contact? Do we have a contact in Esri?
Our best. That's a good question. I do not know, a specific person at Esri, but for this purpose, for our WSA monitoring, you can contact me, or you can contact Erin Clark, our interim conservation director, as she is also a GIS whiz, and has been really essential in the background getting all of that Survey 123 stuff set up. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find someone who knows the answer.
That's not that. That was more out of curiosity.
This is Erin. I'm actually here as well today, and I am not a GIS whiz.
That's however,
not true. Survey 123 is something I've used quite a bit. So if there are features that we're not using in Survey 123, or ways in which you think we should improve how we've built our form, I am all ears on that. I'm going to drop my email address here in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. We can jump on the phone if you'd prefer, but I do have a contact at Esri that I reach out to.
Okay. It was as much out of curiosity, but I was also willing to facilitate a contact, since I know pretty much everybody at Esri, although they don't always remember me, all the way up to Jack. So, we have, I think I could manage contacts if we need them. I'm sure you have plenty of what you need for right now. But if you don't, we can exchange email, and I'll offer that as well. In fact, a good friend who's team lead for the Natural Resources group is actually here in Bozeman with us right now. So,
nice. That's great, Scott. Thank you. I'll just say a quick thank you to Esri. They do provide us a fantastic nonprofit rate to use Survey 123. It's incredibly affordable and makes it a no-brainer for us on a project like this. So,
well, yeah, I think Jack is kind of militant about supporting organizations like Wild Montana. So you've definitely got that on our side for. But I guess what was more important now is, like I said, I said a couple of times, it was kind of more of curiosity. Are you going to be compiling the information that volunteers provide in a way that the rest of us can see who's visiting where, how often, and what they're seeing? So, or is there some other strategy for organizing us so that we don't all go to the same place, at one end of the spectrum, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is something that I have kind of on the long list of opportunities within this program. For our capacity this summer, we on our end really don't have the ability to sort of track that information as it comes in and then like make it available on our website. But that is something that I think would be really cool if we could figure out a way to do that, to make it easier for folks to, exactly what you said, see where other folks are going, and then maybe determine, oh, well, it looks like someone's been to this WSA a lot, maybe I'll check out a different one. But yeah, unfortunately this summer we're just not going to have the ability to do that. But that being said, all and any information from any WSA is really helpful. And I think particularly those that are indeed more popular, that do see more visitation, like it is arguably that much more important that we get good data for those WSAs too. So yeah, again, Scott, that's a great idea, keeping it on the list. But for this summer, just like go wherever your heart takes you. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing per se.
Okay, good, fair enough. So that's all I had. I'll stop
Awesome, thank
talking
you.
now.
I just saw someone raise their hand, but I don't know who it was. Oh, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. And sort of a related question, are there certain WSAs that we would assign a higher priority to than others, either because of maybe a lack of information or maybe their status is more threatened? And then similarly, what about a WSA like here just south of Bozeman with the highlight porcupine buffalo horn, where at least a portion of that is now, a good portion of that, thanks in part to our efforts, is now recommended wilderness status. Is that still an area that we should concentrate in or not?
Yeah, those are great questions. Again, like any WSA is really important. In the handbook on pages 6 and 7, we list out a couple, well, actually more than a couple, it is kind of a lot. We list out a fair number of WSAs, both again, Forest Service and BLM, that, based on our sort of land planning priorities, what we know is kind of going on behind the scenes with the Forest Service or the BLM, or also just our own, lack of information about some of these places. We do list those out, individually. Places like 10 Lakes is a really critical area that we always, want to keep an eye on.
I don't.
Yeah, 10 Lakes up in Northwest Montana. Down in Southwest Montana, places like the Ruby Mountains and the Centennials. Of course, there's way more WSAs down in the Dillon Field office. But again, any and all WSA is a great one to visit. But if you are looking for maybe some specific ones, check out pages 6 and 7 in the handbook. But don't necessarily limit yourself to those or feel like those are the only ones you can visit. If your heart is in highlight porcupine buffalo horn, spend all of your weekends there, and that's wonderful. What else? Who's next?
Yeah, this is Suzanne. I didn't really understand the aspect of reporting violations. I don't know enough about the wilderness study areas to understand that. So is there going to be more information provided about that, or is that something that you might expect us to even run into?
Yeah, absolutely. We did have a couple of folks last summer run into some issues or problems that they wanted to draw our attention or the land manager's attention to immediately. Things like tire tracks where there weren't supposed to be tire tracks, things like downed fences that posed a risk. Things like, even sometimes really basic things like trail signs that were missing that were causing confusion as to like who's allowed to go where. All of that stuff was really helpful. The violations form, of course, is maybe a little bit more tailored to or thinking more specifically about particular uses that are not allowed. So those things like, again, tire tracks where they're not supposed to be, evidence of riparian damage from motorized use or from, folks like trying to walk around a particularly muddy spot in a trail and it just like expanding the muddy spot. Those sorts of violations that I guess you can think of it as like they violate the integrity of the WSA. We can, of course, I'm sure we've all encountered folks in the field who are doing something somewhere that we know they're not supposed to be. And it is important for the Forest Service to know when and where folks are doing things that they're not supposed to. And this form is a way to let the Forest Service know that. Again, so like if you see someone, riding an ATV in an area that is closed to motorized use, if you see someone riding an ATV off trail, sort of cross country, stuff like that, if you see someone like illegally harvesting firewood, those are all things that we'll want to capture here. And I do want to be clear that you're under no expectation or obligation to confront someone if you do in fact see that individual. It can, those things can escalate, and we don't want anybody to be, put in a bad position. But if you feel, confident and safe to have a conversation with that person about hey, just noticed that you're out here and wanted to have a conversation about this. I don't think you're allowed to do X, Y, Z. That's totally up to you. But, always use your best judgment and keep yourself safe. And what's more important is letting the land management agency know that something was amiss in the field. And if you're not sure if something is a violation, if you just aren't sure, if it is or isn't against the rules, go ahead and note it in the violation form. And then when we get it, when you send it to us, we can take a look at it and decide if that is something that, is indeed something that we want to raise to the Forest Service's attention, or, if it's not a violation. Does that make sense? I don't want you to feel like you need specific, training on a violation, language or whatever. Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
Hi, this is Keena Christensen. I'm behind, so I didn't download the app I'm just looking at the handbook now. Can we talk about some of the things that we're monitoring?
Yeah, absolutely. So the purpose of this summer's opportunity is to collect observational data about wilderness characteristics in Montana's wilderness study areas. There's 44 of them, all across the state, from, the far eastern side of the state over around the CMR, the Charles M. Russell National Wildlife Refuge, all the way up over to 10 Lakes outside of Troy. And yeah, so what we're looking for is, qualitative and some quantitative information about the naturalness qualities of the area, opportunities for solitude, opportunities for primitive and unconfined recreation, and then additional values that make the place particularly wild or unique or special. So, capturing your observations about, how natural an area appears, which is an observation of the extent to which the area is primarily affected by the forces of nature. So that's things like the presence of native plants and animals, the presence of undammed creeks or rivers, evidence of natural forces like natural fires and flooding. And then conversely, it's also measured by the lack of things like dams. So it's a little bit, one and the other. The lack of non-invasive species, the lack of evidence of really heavy human infrastructure. All of those are quite qualitative, I would say. Opportunities for solitude is that sense of getting away from it all, from being disconnected, from really feeling as though you are away from, modern civilization. That being said, an outstanding opportunity for solitude doesn't mean that you're never going to see a plane flying overhead. It doesn't mean that you can't, get on top of a ridge and see a fence from 2 miles away. it's kind of hard I think it's a little bit tricky to describe like opportunities for solitude, but I think we all know that feeling of like, wow, I really am far away from it all. I really do feel like emerged and surrounded by the natural environment in a really particular and unique way. So, yeah, so that sort of stuff. And then primitive and unconfined recreation are things like challenging hiking, horsepacking, backcountry skiing, all unaided by motorized or mechanized transportation. It can be observed by like how the quality of the terrain of, scrambling over or through. That being said, you don't have to like, climb a 14,000 foot mountain for it to be considered, an outstanding primitive experience. But again, it's that sort of like observational feeling of like, wow, I'm really away from it all. This is, I'm working really hard in the natural environment. So those are the major things that we're looking for. I think probably some of the things that folks most notice and are really, really helpful are, again, things like invasive species, like invasive plants or grasses, evidence of native species. Like we got some reports last year of like really incredible reports of fresh grizzly scat and fresh grizzly tracks and even wolf tracks, which was really cool to read about. And then another way to kind of measure these things is like, how many people do you see out and about? Are you the only one who's out there, or are you kind of in like a steady ants marching line of folks who are here? And I don't want to say that like humans in and of ourselves are immediately detracting from nature, but it's about that quality. Like we can have, and of course people are part of the environment. But it's about that quality of experience. I know I go some places that are like state DNR land that I consider incredibly wild, and that I have more of a like unconfined primitive experience than I do in some of those more like front country sections of the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness, where it does see quite a bit more visitation. And I'm actually always really happy that people are visiting the AB because I love that place and I want more people to know about it. But so don't think that people in and of themselves are a bad thing, but it is important to know the intensity of use that this area is seeing to make sure that we're maintaining those other qualities for all of these people to enjoy. So yeah, hopefully that was kind of helpful. Were there other things specifically that you had questions about in terms of what we're measuring and how and where?
Sort of.
Okay.
So I'm a amphibian biologist, wetland biologist
Cool.
by profession. So I'm used to lots of quantitative data.
Cool.
So I'm looking at the data sheet in the handbook, and it looks like lots of I haven't looked at the Esri stuff yet, but so there's just lots of let's see, it says data collected, and then there's just opportunities to write in your observations. So is there like, are we like counting wetlands? Are we counting trees? I mean, like, is that stuff part of the monitoring that's in the app, or is it very similar to what's in the handbook?
Yeah, that's a great question. So
I'm more just like thinking about like, do I need to bring like a shovel? Do I need to bring
No, you definitely don't.
A magnifying glass? Like what?
Boy, if you want to, like that's fantastic. So the paper forms that are included in the handbook are the same as the forms that are in Survey 123 in Esri. We made those mirror images of each other. And this opportunity is I guess is geared towards or is created to be incredibly inclusive so that folks from all backgrounds can go out and observe and write down what they see. But if you are the kind of person that like has the technical skills and training to be able to provide that more detailed like scientific qualitative, or no, quantitative, there we go, data and information, like that is incredibly helpful. Again, the form is pretty open-ended, to allow people to fill it in, and provide the information like to their best ability. So again, like if you get out there and like you start counting, individual native frogs, I don't know, other like like individual species, or whatever, that is incredibly helpful. But if you're someone like me who is just like, cool, a frog, I see it, that's also really, really helpful. Getting this range is part of this like comprehensive monitoring of what's going on in this place broadly. So yeah, no need to bring a magnifying glass, but boy, if you want to, you're going to see some cool stuff. Lee and Joe.
Thank you so much for having us. Do you want any digital uploads, videos, photos, anything like that? Would that be in the 123 survey portal?
Yes, if you, particularly for, violations or things that you think need to be addressed, photo documentation is super helpful. For example, last summer, we had a guy who's in the Middle Fork, Judith, who observed like motorized recreation where it wasn't supposed to be. And he took a photo of it and a photo of the trailhead, and we sent it to the Forest Service, and the Forest Service's immediate response was, oh, no, motorized recreation is allowed there. And then we were like, well, actually, here's the trailhead sign that says no motorized recreation. And here's where it was like literally driven over. So yeah, photos are super helpful. Erin, I don't remember, can we accept, like, can you attach photos in Survey 123 and submit them that way?
Survey 123 does have that capability, and I believe I did implement it in our form. I'll double check that, but you should be able to submit photos, and if it's not present there now, I'll add it here in the next couple days.
Okay, cool. Yes, you should be able to do that digitally on Survey 123. If it is not working for you, or if it's easier for you to send it another way, you can just email your photos either to me, Bertram@wildmontana.org, or to submissions@wildmontana.org. And we'll make sure to match those photos up with any data that you provide. But yeah, pictures are always helpful. Again, like of particular violations, but of course, just of the like beautiful scenery that we have out there. We're really fortunate that in our group of wild Montanans, we have some really talented photographers, and we really love to be able to show off the photographs and the videos that people take in the field, in our communication efforts and our advocacy efforts. So, if you see a beautiful sunrise, or like a great photo of like an elk or whatever, definitely let us know. So yeah. What else? Anybody else have any questions?
Hey, Aubrey, I have a question for you. This is Bo and Helena. What about multi-day trips? Do you want multiple forms reported for that, or how do you want to go about that? Because I see in Survey 123, it only has one date, survey date, and that's it.
Yeah, I will add that to the ongoing list of things to sort of think about tweaking, but let's do like one day, one form per day.
All right.
Yeah, I think that'll help keep it clean on everyone's end. Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
This is just a peek at our form to see where we can accept photographs currently, and just a little update on that. So right now there's options to add images of structures, of evidence of motorized or mechanized use, sign vandalism, and natural resource damage, and noxious weeds. What I'll do is I'll add another just opportunity at the very bottom of the form for you to attach any other photographs you'd like, which could be of positive things and beautiful things and rare things that you find, in addition to these other options, which are more of kind of like negative incursions on wilderness character. Thanks for suggesting that.
Cool. Suzanne, what were you gonna say?
Sorry, I was just tooling around on the survey 123 instructions in the handbook, and the link, the HTTPS link doesn't send me to any page. So I don't know if the link is, if there's a typo in the link. I swear I've typed it in
Is it
correctly.
on page 16, the HTTPS?
Yes.
Okay, so those two links are how you access the forms on the Survey 123 app. So I don't think if you type them into your browser on a laptop, it's going to get you to anything useful. What you have to do to
No,
use
I'm doing
Survey.
it on my phone.
Oh, on your phone?
I'm
Okay.
doing it on my phone, and it's not going anywhere.
Let me.
It says the search is not matching any documents.
Suzanne, I will take a look at that and get back to you to help troubleshoot.
Did
Okay,
you type in HTTP
yes, S
and you did the backslash because it worked.
colon
great.
2 backslashes arcg.is/E capital G small m capital G capital D 0.
I just did it and it worked.
Well,
Do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android?
Android.
Oh, okay. It might be different depending on the your.
It is.
Okay.
We've experienced this in the past. So I'll follow up with you directly, Suzanne.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I did not realize that there was that difference between iPhones and Androids on Survey 123. So that's great. Look at us, problem solving. What else? What other questions or concerns do folks have? I see in the chat, somebody asked, of the 44 WSAs across the state, how many are BLM and how many are Forest Service? There are 7 managed by the Forest Service, and then the other 37 are managed by the Bureau of Land Management. Those 7 Forest Service ones are, like size-wise, they're generally really big. They're like the highlight porcupine, buffalo horn, middle fork Judith, blue joint, 10 Lakes. If you had asked me to do this an hour ago, I would have been able to name them all, but those brain cells have since left my head. But then the BLM manages a ton of much smaller WSAs all across the state. There's a number down in the Priors. Again, there's quite a few up around the Charles M. Russell National Wildlife Refuge, sort of on both sides of the Musselshell and on both sides of the Missouri. We've got Bitter Creek up around Glasgow, and then a whole bunch down in Southwest Montana, managed by the Dillon Field Office down there. So yeah, really a ton of WSAs across the state.
Sorry, this is Suzanne again. Do you think there would be a good reason for us to try to contact someone in the Forest Service or BLM who's responsible for the area before we go? Like just to check in with them? Would that be like they have a zillion things going on and, you know,
yeah,
irritating? It just seemed like maybe they would have they might have something they're interested in themselves, or I don't know, or tips or something.
Yeah. So I will remind all of these land managers that Wild Montana will have volunteers out in the field, collecting this data, again, reminding them that it's not a substitute for their statutory regulatory requirements, but that we'll follow up with them with what we find. Certainly, I always recommend checking in with someone before you head out, just sort of that general safety thing. And if that person or entity is the Forest Service, like that is one of the things that they do is folks will call in and say, hey, I'm heading out on this trailhead. I expect to be back by XYZ time. That is definitely one of the things that they do. You can also let me know, but then just let me know when you get back too. And in terms of contacting the Forest Service or the BLM before you head out for anything else, I often find that these folks are really excited to talk about the places that they manage, and often have the best on the ground, most up-to-date knowledge of road conditions, of a carcass in the area that you need to be aware of oh yeah, this fence blew down the other day and we haven't gotten around to fixing it, so just be careful about that. So especially if you're unfamiliar with a WSA, haven't been, I would give them a call and ask for any current conditions, ask if they have any access information, or a map that you can grab somewhere. BLM offices across the state have, just as a rule, they are a tremendous resource for maps, and not just for BLM lands, but also for Forest Service lands and Fish and Wildlife Service lands. So, if you ever need a map of an area, call the closest BLM office and they'll help you sort it out.
And then to add to that, these are generally well-defined or somewhat well-defined trails and at the BLM to the Forest Service, or are they pretty much really wilderness? So you got to trout your own trail.
Yeah, there is a variety. Places like the Highlight, Porcupine, Buffalo Horn, there are some more developed, maintained trails. But in other places, like say Muscle Shell Creek WSA, Bitter Creek WSA, there are no trails. Bitter Creek maybe wasn't the best example. There still are no trails, but the road access makes it pretty easy to know where you're going. So yeah, so certainly for areas that you have not been to before, maybe get in touch with one of us. Certainly reach out to the managing agency and ask them for access or conditions. Another great resource would be the Hike Wild Montana webpage, and you can look up specific trails that are in WSAs if you want to stay on a trail. But I would say consider wilderness study area access to be more on the primitive and more on the unconfined side as a general rule, with again some places not having any defined or maintained trails, and it is the definition of unconfined and primitive. I will say one thing we ran into last summer that is just an ongoing consideration is, of course, weather considerations, particularly fire. And just want to reiterate, don't put yourself in a situation that is remotely unsafe or uncomfortable in that respect. For me, I have really bad respiratory problems. So venturing out of doors when it's really smoky is just not an option for me. And I just encourage, folks to take care of their lung health, as well as obviously you don't want to be anywhere near an area where there's an active wildfire. And some of those other safety considerations, all of these WSAs are in, predator country. If it's a rattlesnake, or a bear. A lot of them are also in moose country, which I sometimes consider a predator because they are big and scary and have bad eyesight and dangerous. So, definitely be very aware of all those considerations too. Just saw someone drop something in the chat. Yeah, if we have a shared Excel document for volunteers to keep track of the areas that they are visiting. Yeah, that was something that Scott asked earlier, and I think that is a fantastic idea, and it's something that I really hope that we can get to at some point. But right now, looking at this summer, we just don't have the like staff capacity to be able to sort of monitor and manage something like that. But certainly, that is something that I would love to be able to have. But we just aren't quite there yet this summer. So, for this summer, if you have a question about, where you want to go, you can shoot me an email or give me a call, and I can look at the data that we have and let you know, like, hey, we've, had 7 reports from XWSA. If you want to go to this one instead, like, I can do that on kind of a one-off basis if you're really interested in that. But otherwise, again, just go where your heart desires, because there's no data that will not be helpful data. Even if it's 8 people reporting the same thing, like that is actually still really, really helpful.
Aubrey, this is Scott again. I wonder, I think that's a good suggestion too, and it's something the volunteers could actually probably manage and take it off your hands to a large extent. In fact, maybe totally. The first question that comes to my mind is, do you guys have a Google Drive?
Oh boy,
location?
Do we have a Google Drive?
Okay, well, there's where we can drop the spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, I will.
If that's acceptable to Wild Montana, that is.
Yeah, I will think about that. I'll see if we can pull something together and how to make it like accessible and easy for volunteers. Again, we may just not have time this summer to like get its legs underneath it. But yeah, that is something that we would love to have going forward. So I will look into that next week and I'll let folks know
Okay.
how we're doing with that.
Again, I mean,
And based on last year's experience, we had approximately 24 surveys completed, and there was a very concentrated number of surveys that came in from the highlight porcupine buffalo horn, but very few other areas were surveyed. Of the 44 wilderness study areas, we probably received data for 6 to 8 wilderness study areas. So there was tons of places that were not visited and surveyed last year. So my recommendation is maybe don't go out to the highlight buffalo porcupine and you then therefore will most likely be going to a WSA. It will be very, very valuable to be getting survey information from. We didn't have any surveys submitted for Bitterroot WSAs. I don't think we had anything for 10 Lakes. A lot of the Eastern Montana BLM WSAs, nothing submitted. So there's wide swaths of the state where no data was coming in. And for that reason, and maybe you're kind of feeling this from us, we just don't have a lot of concern about repetitious data. The monitoring pool wasn't producing that type of results last year, other than, yeah, maybe avoid the HPBH.
Thanks, Erin.
So it's Kina again. So I'm a board member for the Wild Divide chapter, and we just came up with we just have a new map for our area, and we sent it out to all of our members. And I don't know, I haven't looked close enough to see if there's any study areas on there. I think there are. I'd be happy to get that sent out to anybody in this group that maybe isn't part of Wild Divide and didn't get it as one of their letters. But it's just for the Divide area. So I think like the Elkhorns, the little belts around there. I'm looking at it right now. It's on my wall.
It is a really cool map. It is a really
Yeah.
cool map. I'm going to post a link to it in our like online store. if folks want to take a look at it there. But it's just a really cool map.
I mean,
in
it's
general.
Yeah, it doesn't have all of Montana on it. It's just got
Mhm.
our region, but I'm assuming there's not a lot of data for that area just based on what Aaron just said. But yeah, maybe something like that. We can have like a map like that with little push pins. But if we have a GIS guy, maybe he can set it up for us. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this, and using my biology brain to go out there and look at some of these areas. This is going to be great. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for wanting to do it. We really appreciate it. And yeah, with 44 WSAs like all across the state, there's no shortage of cool places to visit, no shortage of cool things to check out and to look at. So we're really grateful for folks being interested, just being interested. And it really is as simple as just like going for a hike and writing down what you see. And you can just type it into your phone real quick, and then it'll, load up once you get back to service. So yeah, every little bit is really helpful. And I hope it encourages folks to, get out and either get out to a favorite place and kind of take a look at it with a different lens, through a different set of eyes, or to visit a totally different place, and learn about some new things. Len, I see your question. Is there a good map showing all the WSAs? On page 12 of the handbook, there is a map that we put together of the WSAs. It definitely should not be used as an access map, because it is the whole state, and doesn't, we just can't include like all of that more granular detailed information on a map of this scale. But if you do need or want, specific access or boundaries, that's where maps from the Bureau of Land Management are incredibly helpful. They've got all the maps, they've got all the things. So for specific areas, the BLM maps I have found are just really bar none. Yeah.
So just going back to what you just said before about the phone and the upload, I missed this. There's an app or something that's part of the Montana Wild Montana app that you can put your data in and it'll record it all, so you don't have to go back. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So in the volunteer handbook, there's a couple different options. You can sort of submit your information the quote unquote old fashioned way. We've got these forms that you can print off and mail in, or you can like make a digital copy, fill it out and email it in. Or you can download and use the Survey 123 app on your phone and access these forms digitally. So then you just, kind of type some stuff into your phone as you hike, and you can collect data while you're out of service. And then once you get back into cell service range, it'll automatically, I don't think it automatically uploads. I think you have to remember to like hit send, but it makes it super easy. You don't have to, worry about like your water bottle leaking on a piece of paper or something, which inevitably happens to me. But yeah, all of the information for downloading and submitting information is in the volunteer handbook that's sent out to folks once they register. And that's on page 16. And then I will also point folks to our kind of the landing page for all of this work, which is wildmontana.org/wilderness-study-area-monitoring. And on that web page, we have a really great video that Erin put together last summer, where she's got her screen like on the video and like walks you through step by step how to get this app on your phone and what it's going to look like frankly, last summer, that's how I downloaded it. I watched this video and I like hit pause at every step and went back to my phone and did it. So yeah, mad props to Erin for making that really, really easy to access. So I will put that in here as well in case folks haven't. So yeah, make sure you check out that video. I will work with Keely to get this recording out to all of you, in addition to all the folks who registered who weren't able to join. And I'll also work with Keely to make sure we can get this session on that website as well, so you can reference it throughout the summer. Yeah, wonderful. Are there any other questions or anything else folks want to bring to our attention?
Aubrey, can you just drop the registration link into the chat once more for some of the people who joined halfway through? So using that link and registering to be a volunteer will cause the handbook that Aubrey's been referencing to be sent to you. Sorry, I put the wrong link up above. Use the p2a.co one. And yeah, the handbook will be coming your way shortly.
Yeah, awesome. And again, keeping a really accurate count of, you know, individual number of volunteers and the individual numbers that each of those people contribute to our work is really essential. So, you know, again, if you and your best friend go out for a hike, you know, you both can submit a form, even if you see the exact same things. That way we know that there were 2 people who each hiked for 5 to 7 hours, because all of that data about who you are and what you're doing, in addition to all of the things that you see, all of that is really important. So, so yeah, make sure you get your friends and your family signed up as volunteers. And then if you guys go out together, you know, make sure you all submit your own form. So that way you're all counted. Cool. Any last questions or anything else that folks want to bring up? All right. Well, thank you guys all so much for, again, just for being interested in being a wilderness study area monitor, and then taking some time this afternoon to have this conversation. I really appreciate it. You know, again, at any point, please feel free to send me an email or give me a call. And yeah, I look forward to reading everyone's reports and seeing everybody's pictures throughout the summer. So thank you guys all so much.
Thank you, Aubrey, and thank you,
Aubrey.
Erin.
And Erin, yes.
Yeah, thank you guys. We'll talk to everybody later.
Thank you all. We really appreciate your support here.